Hello everybody and welcome along to a brand new video where I'm back again reviewing classic Doctor Who, continuing my marathon and various reviews of various episodes from the classic era as well. We're at Patrick Troughton once again, and this week we've reached the evil of the Daleks. So yes, this is the 1967 Doctor Who Season 4 sort of finale story. When this originally made, this was meant to be the final showdown between the Doctor and the Daleks. This was meant to be the final end for the Daleks because Terry Nation wanted to take the rights of these to go and make a Daleks sort of, I think, TV series in America that was just going to have the Daleks in, which was likely to mean that Doctor Who lost the rights to using the Daleks at all. So they decided it would be a good time now to try and get in one last big epic showdown between the Doctor and the Daleks, which basically wipes out the Daleks and leaves us sort of moving on from the Daleks to something else in Doctor Who, because they really thought at the time that there would never be even the chance to use the Daleks again in Doctor Who. And it very much shows in this episode it is meant to be the kind of final battle between the Doctor and the Daleks, where the Daleks are kind of putting the final piece of the puzzle together to try and become the most sort of superior beings that have no sort of weaknesses at all. They were trying to remove that last weakness, and obviously still the Doctor defeated them. This is another one of those stories that I knew nothing about from the Troughton era. Obviously only one episode exists out of the 7 episodes, which meant 6 episodes of reconstructions, but I just never really read anything into this story. I was aware that it's very highly regarded generally by the sort of people who have seen it. I think it's a very, very popular story. But yes, I went in very fresh, not really knowing anything about it, and I did enjoy it. I don't know if I think it's one of the sort of greatest Dalek stories of all time. Certainly I thought Power of the Daleks was better for me than Evil. Maybe if in the future, who knows, if we get an animated version of Evil of the Daleks, it might kind of get me to reassess my thoughts on this, and I certainly would do another video on it if it ever came to that, because it can sometimes be a bit of a drag and not quite as engaging as much when you are watching the reconstructions as opposed to the sort of animated versions. I mean, hats off to the guys at Loose Cannon who did the reconstruction for Evil of the Daleks, because it is really, it's fantastic. There's so much work and effort that's gone into it. It looks like they've actually taken a Dalek to the mansion where a lot of the episode is set and gone and filmed them sort of more recently with a Dalek and tried to kind of grain it up and do it in black and white and everything to make it look like it fits in with the sort of footage of the time. And that's just a sort of fantastic dedication to be willing to do that. Plus there's animated scenes and everything, like in the lab. They had so many animated versions of the lab. It really did, they clearly wanted to put a lot of effort into making a significant and big story and popular story like this the absolute best that they can possibly make it. And it really, really shows, and I thought they did a really, really great job on the reconstruction. And so it was, yeah, it made it more enjoyable in that regard because it was one of the much, much better reconstructions. But yes, in terms of the story, I think it's a really, really intriguing one in terms of the sort of idea of the Daleks trying to sort of work out identifying their weakness, or thinking that they've identified their weakness, and then convincing the Doctor to try and sort of test on humans to try and find that magic human factor that apparently the Daleks need. And then obviously the twist towards the end that actually that was just them using all that information to find out that actually they don't need any human factor, they just need the Dalek factor, which they're going to kind of reinforce all the Daleks into to make them even stronger beings. Ultimately, we meet the Dalek Emperor over on Skara as well, which is fantastic. That's such a brilliant sort of design, and the set looks amazing and everything. Those sort of, as much as we don't have much footage of that, we've thankfully got some filming for some sort of documentary, I think, back in the 60s of the model sort of shots that they did for this episode. So there is a documentation, sort of visual video documentation of those final few scenes with this sort of exploding Daleks and the Emperor being destroyed and everything like that, which is great to see, because when we don't have the actual episode, we've at least got something visual and moving to be able to kind of get a feel for what that would have looked like on the TV back in 1967. So that was really, 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 really good, and a really, really sort of great, I think, to have the final showdown of the Daleks featuring the Emperor, the greatest of the Daleks at the time that we thought it was. That's kind of making it as big as it can possibly be, really, in that regard. And so I thought that was a really good idea to kind of bring that as a character into it. Of course, it's the usual Daleks wanting to conquer the universe, but also being quite, yeah, again, that we saw in Power of the Daleks to a degree, being very scheming and coming up with very kind of interesting plans to try and ultimately enslave the universe, but using the help of humans, or as they often do. And Maxtable, the guy who sort of is looking for the secret to turn silver into gold or metal into gold so that he can make so much money, and has been sort of won over by the Daleks and helping out the Daleks in that regard. Of course, we all know he's stupid and that the Daleks were going to turn on him and kill him, or turn him into a sort of human-controlled, Dalek-controlled human or something like that in the final episode of this story. And of course, this episode also introduces Victoria. Victoria Waterfield, I think it is, who is the next Doctor Who companion at this sort of stage of the show. I've never really seen a huge amount of her in Doctor Who. I've seen Tomb of the Cybermen, which is the next story. I have seen that before, so I was aware of her, but I never knew quite how she was introduced into Doctor Who. And I guess to a degree she feels like the archetypal Doctor Who 60s companion who is that sort of screaming young woman, a screaming attractive young woman, who's probably almost not that much older than Susan, I think, in reality, is meant to be as a character, and sort of just ends up with the Doctor and Jamie because of obviously her dad being killed in this story, which is quite sort of dark and sad. Although it was interesting how that wasn't particularly dwelled on. I thought it happens, I think, in episode 7, the final episode, and then the Doctor says it, and she doesn't seem to really cry or anything, as far as I could tell. It kind of just, she sort of accepts it. I can't really remember if that has much of an effect from her in Tomb of the Cybermen. Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched that, so I'll have to sort of have a think about that again. And I also don't think that Victoria does that many different stories. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having another sort of different companion now that we've got rid of Ben and Polly. And we've still got Jamie on board, who's always fantastic. And the Doctor just having to kind of goad Jamie into doing the things that obviously the Daleks really are asking for, but the Doctor kind of having to be a little bit mean almost to Jamie to try and trick him because he's a little bit less intelligent from being from the sort of 1800s, and being able to just kind of use that sort of almost reverse psychology and sort of mind games with Jamie to be able to convince him to do the things that the Daleks wants the Doctor to kind of convince Jamie to do. And so that was all really, really cleverly done. And going from those sort of different settings, initially kicking off the story with the TARDIS being stolen, so leaving it on a cliffhanger from the faceless ones of the TARDIS being stolen, and then having to try and that leading into episode 1, all very, very mysterious, sort of all very cloak and dagger, these mysterious people working for Mr. Waterfield and trying to kind of work out what's all going on with that bit. And I just remember there was a moment where I realised when they sort of said something along the lines like these antiques have got to be the original Victorian ones, and suddenly it clicked. Of course, this guy has been transported in time or something, that he actually is from Victorian times, but he's running an antique shop in 1966. So that was really, really clever, just sort of being able to do that. And then obviously fairly quickly, I think at the end of episode 2, or middle of episode 2, we end up going to the mansion back in the 1800s, which is the kind of main setting for the bulk of this story. And just as everything's gradually explained of what they were trying to do, trying to sort of discover the secret to travelling in time, these two kind of mad scientist almost people, well, Maxwell certainly a proper sort of archetypal with the crazy hair, sort of old man crazy hair. He properly just looks like your mad scientist that you get in so many Doctor Who stories. So that was great. And yeah, that just sort of idea that they've been trying to discover time travel and then have accidentally kind of stumbled across the Daleks, I think it was, and then the Daleks have enslaved them essentially, and trying to find out what the human factor is that they need to add to them because they've been defeated by humans so many times in the past. But then obviously that's not really what they were looking for. It's just using them so they can realise that actually the Daleks are superior and we just need to be more like a Dalek and we will defeat them. Defeat all the humans. So there's a lot of really interesting ideas in there. And yeah, I think it's a story that I maybe didn't enjoy quite as much as Power of the Daleks, as I say. I think sort of where just in Power of the Daleks having to completely pretend to help the humans and be the servants of the humans and everything is just such a brilliant and clever and scheming idea from the Daleks, whereas here they very much are more normal, I guess, in regards of using, just being the Daleks and killing people and using the humans to try and get their way and get things how they want it. But also the very intriguing idea of when the Daleks they get those Daleks sort of infected with the human factor and then they sort of turn up as children Daleks is really, I'd never seen anything like that before in Doctor Who, and it is almost sort of farcical to a degree. But then the sort of 3 childlike Daleks having sort of running around playing games, the Doctor giving them names and everything, it was just such a sort of an idea I'd never seen done in Doctor Who before, and it was just really intriguing. It was a little bit kind of weird and strange hearing the Daleks sort of making kind of children's sort of speech patterns and sounds and styles and everything was a little bit odd, but it was very, very intriguing, and I'm sure gave the kind of kids a little laugh at the time when they were watching it. It's probably to a degree put in for that reason, but also obviously plays well into the plot as well at the end of the story when all the childlike Daleks get sort of turned on to the real Daleks and start sort of destroying them all, and basically Daleks destroying Daleks and everything, and it's just massive explosions and the whole city's destroyed. And it is a kind of proper big epic conclusion to this story where the whole city is just being wiped out and the Emperor Dalek's destroyed, and it's just that very much is the final battle, as I say. That's what it was meant to be, and I think it really shows in this story. So yes, overall it was a story I really enjoyed. It wasn't, as I say, as good as Power of the Daleks, but still a very good Dalek story, and one I would like to see animated in the future. I think it would help me enjoy it more if it was animated in the future. I think it was just one of those that I could have done with a few more visuals, and as much as we got some in the final episode, I think just seeing a lot more of the sort of scenes on Skaro in that last sort of episode or two, I think would have really helped my enjoyment of this story as well. So yeah, it's by no means a bad story. It is certainly a very good story, just not maybe as good as I thought it would be based on some people's opinions of it. But what about you guys? What do you think of this story? Do you think it is right up there with or even better than Power of the Daleks and one of the best Dalek stories there's ever been? Or do you think that actually it's okay, but it's not one of the greatest ones, or even that it might benefit from the animation as well? But actually this is also a significant moment for me, because it does now mean that I have watched, at some point in my life, every single TV Dalek Doctor Who story, because I have in the past watched all the ones in colour. It'd only been Power, well, actually I'd watched Power recently. Evil of the Daleks was the last one I hadn't seen in any form before, and so I can officially say I have seen every single Dalek story there's ever been on TV in Doctor Who. So there we go. Big moment for me, haha! But yes, I hope you have enjoyed this video, guys, and I'll be looking to review next. I think I'll be moving straight on to Tomb of the Cybermen and reviewing that. Another fantastic story, one that I have seen before, so I'll be coming at from a slightly different perspective, but one I cannot wait to get stuck in and watch again, and do a review as well, because it's just such a fantastic story. But I hope you have enjoyed this review and this video. Do remember to hit that like button if you did enjoy it, and subscribe if you are new here, and I'll see you again very soon for another video. Goodbye!